Hello and welcome to a new episode of Funnelocity, the B2B podcast that brings you real talk around different strategies that can help you build a high-performance sales and marketing funnel. I'm Enrico, president of MarketOne and your host. For today's episode, we're taking a look at one of the most commonly asked and even perhaps over-asked questions in B2B marketing, and one that ties in closely with the name of our podcast. Is the funnel dead? Or are we just trying to do too much with it? To look into this hotly disputed topic, I'm joined by two of my colleagues from MarketOne, Jenny Comisford and Mary Kleinsorgen. Jenny is a digital strategist at MarketOne and has just rejoined us after a 3-year spell on the client side. She has over 10 years experience in marketing operations and demand generation. When she's not working, she's hanging out with her husband and her 2 terriers, Jack and Scarlett. Welcome, Jenny.
Thanks, Enrico. Glad to be here.
Mary's been with MarketOne for over 6 years and has over 15 years of deep expertise in MarTech and demand generation. Outside the office, Mary enjoys tending to her succulent garden of 200 plants and enjoys the great outdoors with her husband and her dog Monty in beautiful Colorado. Welcome, Mary.
Thanks, Enrico.
Right, so let's start, I guess, in the obvious place here. With me asking both of you, is the funnel dead, or are we just trying to do too much with it? Perhaps, Mary, you want to start us off?
I mean, the funnel's certainly not dead. I mean, it's evolved and much more dynamic now. So, obviously the way customers buy has certainly changed. So your traditional funnel is not as linear. Everyone doesn't start at the top of the funnel and move through from one stage to the next. It's more like a revolving door now where everyone can come in at different stages, exit at different stages. So I think our approach to this needs to be much more fluid and dynamic to allow for that. But then also the funnel is more of a tool that it's more of an internal tool for sales to use to try and track that handoff between marketing and sales. I think the intent was originally to be an external tool to define how the customer moves from one journey to the next, but it's really at the end of the day, it's just more of an internal tool for tracking that handoff, for tracking lead conversions, to track velocity from one stage to the next. But as far as a marketing tool is concerned, that's where you have to start factoring in, other avenues, other frameworks, other segments to understand where someone is. How do you shape your messaging? Are my contacts actively moving through the funnel? Are they becoming dormant? Are they becoming stale? So it's not a tool that is meant to be used on its own.
That's
yeah,
great.
definitely.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead, Jenny. Just go ahead. Jump in. Yeah.
Sorry, Enrico. Yeah, I mean, I think listening to Mary talk, like the thing that's coming to my head is it reinforces bad behavior amongst marketing. I think it was the basis for marketing and sales alignment for the longest time. Like you've got to create mutually agreed upon definitions of what an MQL is and what an SQL is and all of these things. And now you've got director boards and C-level suites that, all they want to see is that funnel, and they want to know, how many MQLs have you created? How many opportunities have you created? What do your conversion rates look like? And so the marketer becomes singularly focused on driving those numbers, as opposed to really truly trying to meet the customer or the prospect where they are in their journey, and just being really closely tied to how the customer experiences the brand and their experience with the company as they move through their purchase decision. So yeah, I think it's, to Mary's point, it is not dead. It's not something that we can likely get away from. I think it is certainly dynamic, and every company has to determine kind of what their funnel needs to look like, but there needs to be some recognition that it is not the live and die construct that that marketing should live by, but rather, one piece, one tool in the tool belt. And then in terms of actually engaging customers effectively, there may be better frameworks or segmentation capability to address that.
So it's interesting that you're both kind of looking at the funnel through a few different lenses. You're looking at through certainly sales' lens, which I think is the traditional view of the funnel. It used to be called the sales funnel for good reason. And I get the sense that, yeah, that seems to work well. However, as you move up funnel, up to the kind of what marketing is doing, and perhaps there's weaknesses in using the funnel as a model, and perhaps we can explore other things. But I guess one thing I'd say is, which is echoing, I think, your point, Mary, from earlier, which is it definitely is a great way for teams of sales and marketing teams to align on those kind of KPIs, those SLAs. Lead definition, lead stage definition. And this is obviously an area that MarketOne plays a critical role in with our clients, in ensuring that the leads that we perhaps uncover or identify, or either we're identifying them through outbound calling or qualifying them through marketing tactics, that those are actually handing off in a fluid way to sales, and that there's no or handing back, and also handing back. So handing off to sales and back to marketing for further nurturing. So I feel like those, from that stage further down, what I'm hearing is that the funnel serves a very critical purpose from an internal reporting perspective and alignment. But let's explore what you're also both saying, which is for, on the marketing side, the fact that, when marketing is looking to engage accounts and contacts within those accounts, the funnel, is quite not fit for purpose there. So, Mary, do you want to start us off on this one?
No, but one of the gaps with your traditional funnel is that it just doesn't take it far enough for marketing. So if you take further down the funnel, a purchased segment as an example, there's only so much that marketing can do with that. It's not taking into consideration, well, someone who is a brand new customer, you're certainly going to market to them differently than someone who is more of a loyal customer who is previously purchased, and even communicate to them differently from someone who may have purchased in the past but maybe has not purchased recently. So that's why the traditional funnel is not going to assist marketing in that area. It's really where you have to break that down a little bit further into these subsegments to understand, all right, well, are they reaching the point where they're ready to speak with tele or speak with sales for a follow-up? Or maybe at some point, have they been sent over for follow-up and now they've grown stale, now they've become dormant. So that's where you can align, you can break down the funnel stages a little bit further to understand, right, who's actively moving through, who's starting to become stale, who is dormant, and then aligning your messaging to those subsegments.
Maybe I can ask Jenny the same question. If obviously if journeys are nonlinear, and the funnel perhaps obviously is not the answer to help marketers engage with kind of that, with what turns out to be a much more fluid process. Where, what can we do to solve these issues that you've highlighted?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and we've already been kind of talking around it, is one, recognizing the fact that purchase decisions are not made in a step 1, step 2, step 3, clean, sterile environment. There's a lot of outside influences, budgeting cycles, we didn't hit, goal last quarter, some unexpected expense that showed up, procurement's got a new, thing up their butt, and they, and they're going to add another month's worth of of vetting, you know, before we can make a decision. And, you know, the reality is that the buying journey is really in the purchaser's hands now. We've all been talking about it for a long time. In the new digital world with COVID, it's even more so that, you know, folks have so much information at their fingertips, and that they, you know, they're really gonna come to us on their own terms, choose when to engage with us, when to get information from us versus others, and other resources. And you always have to be there, and you have to be ready. And the funnel just kind of tries to treat it like an assembly line, which doesn't really work. So I mean, you know, this Enrico and Mary at MarketOne, what we try to do is we actually try to create, you know, through technology and process, the ability to really, you know, listen, put out feelers, if you will, to understand truly what's going on with a given contact or account. So, you know, if they engage for a period of time, it's like, ooh, we've got some intent, we've got some interest, how do we capitalize on this? But then if they go dormant for some period of time, well, now we've got to try to re-engage them. And how is the CFO interacting in relation to, you know, maybe one of their direct reports that's doing more of the research, so they're showing up more actively on the radar, and really creating, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a segmentation model, just like the funnel is, but it's, you know, it turns it on its head in terms of, you know, really trying to be focused on how the customer is behaving and how we should react to that, as opposed to trying to kind of force them through our prescribed list of stages. So certainly something that can be done in some degree with folks' typical tech stacks, you know, marketing automation, CRM. You really get to next gen capability if you're able to pull in, you know, a BI stack or CDP. Those are the new fancy tech that everybody's talking about. But again, it's not a replacement for the funnel, but it is probably a more effective, useful tool for the marketer who's trying to make sure that buyers are educated, and progress in their intent and their interest towards a sale.
So I guess what I'm hearing is we need a better framework to drive superior customer engagement. And through that engagement, we can obviously deliver a better customer experience of our, you know, the buyers, if you will, through their buyer's journey. So let's see if we can paint a bit of a picture for our listeners. Obviously, as a podcast, we'll see what we can do to make that visual come through. But if we look at, and we're talking a lot about the customer journey, and the kind of the flaws of using, or the fact that using the funnel is not really fit for purpose in order to create customer engagement programs. But broadly speaking, when we look at a customer journey, we're really talking about engaging in B2B. It's really about, initially it's account engagement, and obviously personas within those accounts or buying units within those accounts. But let's just stick to at the account level initially. And if where we're trying to track perhaps accounts that are in our target market, right, in our total addressable market, that perhaps are not engaging with us, right, or they're still unknown, if you will, to our brand. And we want to get them through the cycle, this customer journey of unknown to known, known to engaged, perhaps engaged into an active purchasing cycle. And I think that's where that purchase cycle can then kind of dovetail with a funnel and the reporting and the SLAs between sales and marketing. And then once they become a customer, hopefully they can turn into repeat customers and advocates. Now that's all great, but at any point along that journey, right, from unknown to known, known to engaged to into a purchasing cycle, and then to repeat orders and advocates, they can obviously drop out, right? They become inactive. disengaged. And I think that's really where the funnel, and that's why the funnel is shaped the way it's shaped as well, by the way, right? But it's in being able to track that kind of disengagement and when let's say a prospect becomes dormant or a customer becomes dormant, and then trying to then recycle them and put programs in place and re-engage with those individuals. So what I'm hearing is that the frameworks that we can perhaps bring to bear allows us. It's a much more dynamic, to use your term, Mary, from earlier, opportunity to really understand where is my customer base and prospect base, within that customer journey, but then also within that journey, how active or inactive are they? Jenny, do you want to react to that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, done well, where you're able to who's active, who's been qualified, who's a customer, who's at risk, where folks are falling out, then it becomes very easy. Well, I don't want to say very easy. It becomes much more clear on how you should activate against that given segment or that given audience. It's very prescriptive at that point in designing your programs. And you can really activate, all of your channels, assuming that the person is known and in your database. Obviously, there's going to be some subsection of your TAM that is not, but you are still going to, you're going to be able to activate your paid social, your retargeting, your email, your teleteam. It can be it's kind of, pick your own adventure every day. We come in and we look at the segmentation and we say, okay, who do we want to tackle today? It becomes, you can set KPIs around it. We like the intent of this program is to move X% from, the dormant after being previously engaged stage back to engaged, for example. So yeah, I mean, I think it is certainly a worthwhile tool and does a bit better at achieving the true goals of a marketer, which is that engagement and education.
So how would we actually go about putting something like this in place? Perhaps Mary, could you speak to that?
Well, I think first it's about just setting expectations, or I guess acknowledging that when you're distributing your database across the buyer journey, across the funnel, across all of these subsegments, that you can't expect to have every category be well populated. But the beauty of this framework is it's just a starting point. It's laying this data foundation out to enable an optimal customer experience in the future. So it's going to evolve over time. And if you don't have a lot of data, if you don't have the right data that fits within each category, that's totally okay. This is a starting point to understand, what does my database distribution look like? How do I define each subsegment? How do I define what the buyer journey looks like? And then you just evolve over time.
Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I would say setting expectations is absolutely key. I think the first step beyond that is just digging into your data. Recognize, making sure you understand your system integrations really well, making sure that you have a good grasp and feeling of your profile completeness on your contact records, your activity tracking, really just starting to try to make sense of it and map it all out. Back to the whole setting expectations thing, the likelihood is that you're going to uncover some setbacks. Maybe something isn't tracking that you thought it was, or you weren't collecting a key field that you need to really be able to define these segments well. So it needs to be, as we've discussed, an evolution. You start out with what you can. It might just be as simple as recognizing, okay, what section of my database is active and what's inactive, and treating people, you know, context differently based on which of those two buckets they sit in, or even, you know, it doesn't seem like it would be a challenge, but if you can actually identify who your customers are, like down to the, not at the account level, but like at the contact level, like being able to, you know, just treat them differently than you treat your prospects. I mean, there's layers of granularity that you can, you know, add into the segmentation model over time as the tracking becomes available. So I think definitely digging into your data, having a desired end state, even if it changes over time, but at least having it mapped out of like what you want that model to look like, so you can start, you know, implementing and fixing the things that you need to do to get to it. You know, we can go ahead and make the plug, but make sure that you have either people internally or a partner who, you know, who really understands how these tech stacks work, how these tools interact with one another, have experience with you know, understanding and activating against the B2B buyer's journey, to kind of help guide you along the path. But you know, good news is that it can evolve over time. It's forever going to be useful, and, you know, built the right way, when you buy new technologies, you can plug them in and layer that insight into the model.
Well, one thing is clear, and that's that data, it all starts with the data. So, and Jenny, earlier you mentioned, you know, you threw out the CDP in order to kind of unify the data that you might have on an account across your different I guess data sets. But can we maybe just quickly talk about whether, you know, does this require a lot of data work outside of existing tools, traditional tools? And I'm thinking about whether, you know, CRM and marketing automation platforms. Does it, you know, do you need to build a data lake, big data lake, or a CDP in order to make this work?
Well, certainly having a data lake, a data warehouse is ideal, to have all of your sources connected and centrally located, so that you can start to develop these segments and even integrate them back into MAP, back into CRM. But that's not, well, it's ideal, but it may not be realistic for all organizations. So quite a few organizations don't have a data lake, a data warehouse, to be able to do all of these, to create this rules engine to craft all those segments. So this is the beauty of this framework, is that it's platform agnostic. You can build it within your map, you can build it within a CRM tool, you can even build it outside of that, even if you have something as simple as you know, a SQL database, or even Excel, you can even build this out on. So it doesn't require a fancy tool to be able to build this. You just need to be able to map out how you're defining each segment, how you're defining the journey, and then from there you can update your map. You can leverage rules in your CRM system to help calculate that. It's similar to a lead scoring, when you're configuring a lead scoring model, whether that's Eloqua, HubSpot, Marketo. You're configuring these rules and these segments and filters based on someone meeting that criteria. You're going to update a stage, or based on meeting that criteria, you're going to update a subsegment. So that's really no different. And again, you don't need fancy tools to start out doing this. In an ideal state, having that separate data entity doing all of this calculation for you is ideal, only because typically in a CDP, in a data lake, you have a variety of different sources, not just map and CRM, but it's beyond that. It's your CMS, it's you know, perhaps any web tracking that you're doing. So you have additional sources that are factored in within this database, where you can get much more sophisticated with your segment definitions. And then through automation, now you can actually cast those segments within that data entity, and then push that information back into your map, into your CRM, into your web tool, to create this this singular view.
Well, I guess our listeners are going to be happy to know that they can leverage their existing tools and not going to have to make massive investments in new data lakes or data platforms. But now with, I guess with this framework, which enables some pretty clever stuff. Maybe Jenny, I can ask you, what are the benefits of it? I mean, what are the things that really we can all of a sudden enable by using this approach?
Yeah, so I mean, I think some of it does depend on whether you're building in a CDP type environment versus within your map or your CRM. Obviously, one of the big benefits is that you're able to provide a level of personalization to your customers, because you know where they really sit in their journey and how they've been engaging and what they've been engaging with. If you are limited to your map and CRM, then you're doing that through email, you're doing that through sales outreach. You're potentially, a lot of ABM platforms now integrate with Salesforce, and so you can create segmentation and execute display advertising or web personalization through those platforms. If you get really fancy and actually develop the segmentation in a CDP with an activation that can integrate with your activation layers, so your trade desks, your media companies, your even paid social campaign builder platforms and those types of things, then it becomes even more sophisticated, and you can just execute, really personalization in a multi-channel and scalable way. The other thing that I would say, and I know we talked about how the funnel is good for sales and marketing alignment, but I think this framework can be really powerful as a tool to partner with sales on as well. I think, first of all, companies more and more now are recognizing that there isn't like this clear handoff from marketing to sales. It's not like marketing owns the prospect up until a certain point, and then they pass it off and they don't have anything to do with the person or the account anymore. And now it's on sales, sales laps to deal with. There's a recognition that it's a bit more of a ping pong match in terms of how sales and marketing really attack prospects and accounts. And so this model can be really powerful, even in partnering with them on how marketing and sales together want to tackle certain segments and subsegments of the model. If no other reason, it's also, pretty intuitive and easy to understand. Like the account, the person's either engaged or they're not. They're a customer or they're not. They're a loyal customer or they're not. It's very the labels themselves are easy to understand, and so it can be powerful just in even conveying what marketing's up to and how they're moving the needle against the framework. And I think it provides a lot of insight into the buyer journey, because what you don't get with the funnel is you don't really understand, not without a massive amount of over engineering, how many times is somebody re-entering and exiting, and where are they re-entering and where are they exiting? Because I know you've mentioned, Enrico, that people fall out of the funnel, but they don't know when they enter back, they don't always enter up at the top. Sometimes they come in as a marketing qualified lead right away, or sometimes they come in through tele, or and I think the framework just does a much better job of allowing you to understand where people are dropping out, where they're coming back in, and it can identify gaps. For instance, in a previous role recently, we built out a bit of a similar customer journey model. Granted, it was at the account level, but we realized that we were requalifying the same accounts 3-4 times in a year, and that very quickly bubbled up to us and sales leadership as something's doesn't seem right there. And so, it provided additional insight for us to address issues and gaps and really, improve efficiencies and quality of the customer experience also.
Sounds like an amazing framework, delivering so much value across the organization. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Jenny. And now maybe just to summarize, Mary, I'll ask you, tell me why this is the way forward.
Well, I mean, this is the path forward, because this is truly enabling that customer first, customer centric approach. Like as Jenny had just said, it's a framework that allows you to personalize that experience and allows you to deliver a much more dynamic customer experience. But it's also this foundation for serving other models. So if you think about predictive modeling, prescriptive analytics, next best action, having your database distributed within this framework is going to help inform, well, based on how someone is reacting or not engaging, then factoring in predictive and prescriptive, helping to inform, well, how do we automate that follow-up action? How do we automate that follow-up message?
Brilliant. Thank you, Mary. Well, I guess you've heard it here. The funnel isn't dead. It's just evolved into a sleeker, more effective framework. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mary, for an inspiring discussion.
Great.
Thank you, Enrico. Definitely enjoyed it.
And thank you, as always, to our listeners. To find out more about MarketOne and the customer journey framework, and to listen to more episodes of this podcast, please visit marketone.com/Funnelocity.